In July 2026, tens of thousands of young Indians marched on Parliament. They called themselves cockroaches. This is the story of the Cockroach Janta Party, a satire that became one of the largest youth protests India has seen. It started with one insult from the country's top judge. And it grew into a movement Prime Minister Modi could not ignore. On May 15, 2026, Chief Justice of India Surya Kant was hearing a case on unemployment. Speaking from the bench, he compared jobless young Indians to, quote, cockroaches and parasites of society. The remark was meant to pass unnoticed, one line in a long legal hearing. Instead, it detonated online within hours. Gen Z had a word for what the country's elite really thought of them, and they were ready to use it. One day later, on May 16, a political communications strategist named Abhijit Dipke flew in from the United States. Dipke did something no one expected. He founded a party and named it after the insult itself. The Cockroach Janta Party, CJP, a satirical parody of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. Its logo, its memes, its entire identity mocked the idea that young Indians were pests to be exterminated. Instead of denying the slur, Dipke's movement embraced it and turned it into a badge of defiance. Within 2 weeks, the CJP's Instagram following crossed 20 million. AI-generated memes, self-deprecating humor, and raw Gen Z frustration did what no political party had managed in years. It made unemployment funny and made the anger impossible to look away from. But behind the satire was a very real, very painful crisis. A national exam system that had failed its own students again and again. The NEET UG exam is India's national gateway into medical college, sat by over 2 million students a year. In 2026, that exam was compromised from the inside. An NTA-appointed chemistry lecturer, P.V. Kulkarni, had access to confidential question papers before the exam. Investigators allege he dictated the questions to students in secret coaching sessions held in advance. At least 7 co-conspirators were arrested across multiple states. Days after the exam, reports of the leak spread, and NEET UG 2026 was cancelled. For students who had studied for years, the exam they'd prepared for no longer existed. Some had sacrificed everything for that one test. Now it meant nothing. Around the same time, the CEB board's on-screen marking system was found riddled with irregularities. It was the latest in what students called decades of repeated failures in how India runs its public exams. In the weeks that followed, the human cost became undeniable. At least a dozen NEET aspirants took their own lives in the aftermath of the cancelled exam. For the CJP, this was no longer a joke about cockroaches. It was a demand for accountability aimed squarely at Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. On June 6th, the movement stepped off the internet and onto the street at Jantar Mantar in New Delhi. Abhijit Dipke arrived in person to lead it. Delhi police deployed around 5,000 personnel. Hundreds gathered, students, parents, doctors, lawyers, teachers, an unusually broad coalition. Alleged RSS-affiliated attackers reportedly tried to disrupt the gathering. Student groups condemned it. Police granted permission only until 5 in the evening, calling it a one-time exception. CJP gave the government an ultimatum, 7 days for Pradhan to resign, or a nationwide agitation would follow. 7 days came and went. Pradhan did not resign. On June 11th, CJP launched a nationwide campaign, starting at Savitribai Phule Pune University. They released what they called an exam manifesto, 5 demands for reforming India's exam system. Among them, 10,000 rupees in compensation for every student affected by the leak. The manifesto wasn't just anger anymore. It was a policy document. CJP announced a citywide tour carrying the same demands from campus to campus. The satire had become a serious political operation, virtually overnight. On June 20th, thousands returned to Jantar Mantar, most of them students. Again, permission was granted only until 5 p.m. Dipke refused to end the demonstration. Witnesses said police switched off the lights and cut access to food and water at the site. It was a pressure tactic meant to make the protesters leave on their own. They didn't leave. And that same day, one man made a decision that would change everything. Ladakhi environmentalist Sonam Wangchuk announced he would begin an indefinite hunger strike a week later. On June 28th, Wangchuk arrived at Jantar Mantar and began his fast. He wasn't alone. 6 students from the All India Students Association joined him. Among them, ISA's national president Neha Bora and independent activist Hamad. Their demand was singular and unmoving: the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan. 2 days later, CJP launched a new campaign with a simple slogan: Pradhan, go back. For the next 3 weeks, that slogan would be shouted in cities across the entire country. Through early July, the hunger strike kept gaining ground and Wangchuk kept losing weight. Opposition parties began throwing their support behind the movement. By July 17th, day 19 of the fast, Wangchuk had lost 9.1 kilograms. Doctors reported muscle loss so severe he could no longer stand or walk without help. Over 1,800 public figures signed an appeal begging him to end the fast. A petition reached the Delhi High Court, asking the government to hospitalize him before it was too late. The court agreed. But how that order was carried out would ignite a new controversy. On July 18th, Delhi police removed Wangchuk from the protest site and admitted him to Safdarjung Hospital. Police said it followed medical advice and the Delhi High Court's own order. Protest organizers told a very different story, a forcibly removal with no warning given. Abhijit Dipke's response was immediate. He announced his own indefinite hunger strike. The Students' Federation of India joined next, its president Adarsh M. Saji and Joint Secretary Aishe Ghosh fasting too. Even Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the opposition, publicly criticized how police had handled it. What had been a protest about one exam was now a standoff over one man's health and one government's tactics. July 20th was the opening day of Parliament's monsoon session, and CJP had a plan. Tens of thousands of protesters, most of them Gen Z, gathered at Jantar Mantar to march on Parliament itself. They called it Chalo Sansad, let's go to Parliament. Delhi police had not granted permission. Prohibitory orders were already in force. 5 central metro stations were shut. The internet around Parliament itself was cut. What followed was the most violent day of the entire movement. Security forces used lathi charges and tear gas against the marchers. The gas didn't stay contained. It reached commuters at Central Secretariat Metro and reporters covering the scene. Protesters alleged they were beaten, dragged along the street, and that children were detained in police buses. At the gates of Parliament, security personnel stood positioned with machine guns. By evening, the official count was 118 police personnel injured. Hospitals reported over 100 injured protesters, one ward logging 65 cases by 7 p.m. CJP's own count was starker still. Roughly 150 protesters hospitalized, 70 detained. One image from that day spread faster than any other. Additional Deputy Commissioner of Police Sandeep Lamba was filmed slapping a female protester. The footage spread everywhere. Rajya Sabha MP Saket Gokhale filed a complaint demanding an FIR against him. It became central evidence in a public interest litigation over the police's use of force that day. One CJP member suffered a broken leg. 15 to 20 government vehicles were damaged. Police said some protesters had thrown stones and that FIRs would follow against them too. That night, it rained over Jantar Mantar, on rubble where a protest camp used to stand. Police had torn down the stage and the tents. The square was empty. By morning, the protesters were back, rebuilding everything from nothing. The message was simple. You can clear the ground, but you can't clear the movement. On July 21st, the Delhi High Court ordered Wangchuk moved again to Medanta Hospital in Gurugram. Inside CJP, spokesperson Vijeta Daya was removed for taking a food break during the clashes. Outside PM Modi's residence, Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge and Rahul Gandhi led their own protest. Police responded by detaining Rahul Gandhi, along with other opposition leaders. Wangchuk's wife, climate activist Gitanjali J. Angmo, kept a sit-in outside Kerala House on his behalf. The movement's reach had already crossed India's borders. Hindus for Human Rights held demonstrations in New York City and San Jose. Solidarity rallies gathered outside the Indian High Commission in London and the embassy in Dublin. Volunteers organized food and water for the protesters. Donations arrived from supporters worldwide. By July 22nd, the protest was no longer just a Delhi story. It had spread to Mumbai, Chandigarh, Surat, Patna, Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Kerala, Lucknow, and Kolkata. Thousands kept protesting through heavy overnight rain, refusing to let the momentum break. And still, the country's highest court would not look at the video evidence. Chief Justice Surya Kant rejected an urgent hearing on the alleged brutality and declined to review the footage. The government's response was to tighten the perimeter. 16 metro stations across central Delhi were closed to keep protesters from the city's center. 20 companies of the CRPF were airlifted in from Kolkata on orders from the Home Ministry. Even so, 2 assistant commissioners and 4 more officers were injured in fresh stone pelting. From his hospital bed, Wangchuk finally put his terms in writing. In a letter to ministers JP Nadda and Jitendra Singh Rana, he laid out 3 conditions to end his fast. First, government acknowledgement and compensation for the students who had died by suicide. Second, a real parliamentary debate on accountability, including whether Pradhan should resign. Third, written assurance that no protesting student or young person would face retaliation. Around 65 opposition MPs signed their own letter, among them Shashi Tharoor and Kapil Sibal. They urged him to end the fast and pledged to keep pressing the government on his behalf. The pressure from the street and now from Parliament itself had become impossible to ignore. On July 23rd, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made his first direct move. He announced fast-track courts to try paper leak cases under India's new anti-cheating law. The Delhi High Court moved quickly to set one up under the Public Examinations Unfair Means Act. It addressed one demand. It did not touch the one CJP cared about most, Pradhan's resignation. Inside Parliament, the deadlock was now in its 4th straight day. Opposition leader Mallikarjun Kharge refused to debate until Pradhan resigned first. The government said it was willing to debate, but without that precondition. Both houses adjourned again and again, while the protest outside kept growing. The controversy even reached the minister's own family. His daughter, Naimisha Pradhan, faced a wave of online criticism for studying abroad. For a movement built on outrage over inequality, even that detail became fuel. Then, on July 24th, 26 days after it began, the fast finally ended. Sonam Wangchuk broke his hunger strike at Medanta Hospital before ministers Nadda and Rana. The government gave written assurances on 2 of his 3 conditions. Cases against non-violent protesters would be dropped and compensation would follow for the victims' families. The 3rd condition, a real debate on Pradhan's resignation, remained unresolved. Abhijit Dipke made the movement's position clear. The sit-in continues until Pradhan resigns. As of today, that resignation still hasn't come. Jantar Mantar remains occupied. Parliament remains disrupted. CJP has quietly changed strategy. No more marches into central Delhi after what July 20th cost them. Instead, the sit-in continues, patient and unwilling to leave. What started as one insulting word from a judge became a name a movement chose for itself. A satirical party, a hunger strike that nearly ended one man's life, and a night of tear gas outside Parliament. All of it traces back to the same failure. An exam system that millions of young Indians trusted, and it broke. The cockroaches, as the Chief Justice called them, did not stay quiet. They organized, they marched, and for a few weeks in the summer of 2026, they made a government listen. Whether that government fully answers them is still being written. This has been the story of the Cockroach Janata Party. And as of July 25th, 2026, that story is still unfolding. This has been the story of the Cockroach Janata Party. On July 25th, 2026, it ended in a resignation and a lesson in what organized youth can do. They organized, they marched, and for a few weeks in the summer of 2026, they made a government listen. And on July 25th, 2026, Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan resigned. He sent his resignation letter straight to Prime Minister Modi. The one name this movement had chanted against since May was finally gone from office. It didn't come from a courtroom, and it didn't come from an election. It came from a 26-day hunger strike and thousands of young people who refused to go home. That is the real lesson of this story. Organized youth, sustained pressure can still move a government. Some demands remain unmet, but Dharmendra Pradhan's resignation is no longer one of them. This has been the story of the Cockroach Janata Party. Proof, in the end, of what organized youth can do when they simply refuse to back down.